Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Nkem Ezamama, and I'm thrilled that you joined me today. We're going to be talking about networking like a pro. But before we dive in, I want to take a moment and ask you to think about the last time you tried to network, right? How did it feel? Did it feel awkward? Did it feel forced? Did you feel a little like sleazy or gross, right? So what if I told you that by the end of our time tonight, right, that you'll never look at networking the same, or you'll never feel the same, right? That instead you'll walk away with a completely new perspective, one that will transform the way you build relationships and ultimately your career, right? That's what you're here, because we want to figure out how to network like a pro. So that's my promise today. Let us get started. But before we get started, right, go ahead and just use the chat, use the questions, ask questions. If there's something that you don't know, you're thinking about, put it in the chat, put it in the comments, and I will definitely get to it. But if you're like, what strategy has even worked for me when I think about networking like a pro, just toss it in the chat, and I'll keep my eyes out in the chat and the questions, and then just engage as we go. So that is my ask. Okay. I'm about to share with you something that will shock you. 85% of jobs are filled through networking. Yet, I can say with absolute certainty that most people in the room are doing it completely wrong. So think about that. 85% of jobs are filled through like who you know, what connections you make. And here is the brutal truth, right? Most so-called like network experts, they teach really outdated methods that guarantee that you'll feel uncomfortable and inauthentic, because these techniques are truly inauthentic, right? I want to ask you this. When you go to a networking event, and if you've gone to a bunch, right, how many business cards are sitting in your drawer right now that you never looked at after you took it, and you probably never will look at it again? And then the follow-up question to that is like, how many like LinkedIn connection requests have you actually never spoken to? That is the fundamental problem here. It's that we've been taught that networking is about, collecting contacts and building your card list. But it's not true, right? Because in reality, it's really about cultivating relationships, one that is really authentic. And there are three critical mistakes that we make. And I've even seen like the smartest of the smartest make it. So we're going to talk about it. So mistake number one, which I think is the deadliest, is focusing on what you get instead of what you can give. And I see this happen all the time, right? People approach conversations thinking, well, what can that person do for me? And you can literally feel that energy coming off of someone when they do that. And it's just, it instantly, it closes doors and it shuts people off when you think about like, what can that person do for me? And the second mistake that a lot of people make is that you treat networking as like a one-time event. So, for instance, like I went to a conference last weekend, and if for me, networking was that as soon as I left that conference, it was done, and I never plan to contact any of those people again, then that's not real networking, right? Because that's not building real relationships. And I want to be crystal clear. Exchanging business cards is not networking. And even like with the new age technology of like tapping phones or scanning QR codes, that's not real networking, but that is the beginning of a potential relationship, but it must be nurtured. And most people who collect all these contacts, they really never follow up. But you have to think about it like planting the seed. It's like you plant the seed, but you never water it. Imagine if you nurtured that relationship and built it, and think about it like as a plant, right? As a seed, and it grows up. That's what you have to think about when you're thinking about how not to make these mistakes. And then mistake number three is that, thinking networking only happens at formal events, i.e. the conference that I just went to. If you think like that, it feels forced, right? But true networking happens everywhere. It happens, think about at coffee shops. It happens in the grocery store. It happens even in online communities, even like in this webinar that we're having right now. This is part of networking, right? And I know these mistakes because I've intimately made them. If you look to like, you can't see to my right, but I have a stack of business cards from January. And the thing is like, sometimes they pile up, but now I'm doing better and I don't just let it end there. I'll tell you all the strategies that I use moving forward. But if you let that pile sit there, right, you'll wonder why nothing ever came from it. And everything changed once I discovered what I want to share with you today. And I want you to think about this. Zig Ziglar said, the quickest way to get what you want is to help someone else get what they want. And so I want you to think about networking from that approach. So I always tell people to bring a pen and a paper, but I forgot to remind you. But if you have a pen or a paper or a phone, I want you to just jot this down and just think, networking is not about collecting business cards. It's about creating value. I'll say it again. Networking is not about collecting business cards. It's about creating value. So now that you understand what not to do, right? Let's talk about the mindset shift that changes everything, because at the end of the day, everything that we do a lot of what we do is about mindset, right? I want you to imagine two people who walk into the same networking event. The first person is thinking, how many business cards can I collect? Who can help me get ahead? And then the second person is thinking, man, how many meaningful connections can I make today? Who can I help get ahead today? Who do you think will walk away from that conference with like the most valuable relationships, right? It's not rocket science. But the fundamental difference between them is a transactional networking versus a relational networking. And you want to be a relational networker, right? And every single top performer that I've studied, they approach networking the same way. They see it as long-term relationship building. It's not just short-term opportunity hunting. It's not how can I make the quickest buck, right? Because when you start thinking about it from a long-term perspective, you will understand that there's a powerful psychological principle, which is that law of reciprocity. And when you genuinely help others, right, with no expectation of return, they naturally will help you back. And you're not expecting it, but it just comes. It's part of human nature. And I want you to show you 3 specific like mindset shifts that will transform how you approach networking. So shift number 1, which I kind of talked about it a little bit, but it's you got to think long term. Most people sometimes have that microwave mentality. And if you know what I mean, you press 30 seconds and your food is ready. But they think about like that microwaving mentality with networking, right? You want instant results, but powerful relationships take time, right? They work like compound interest. So they keep growing over time. Like you can think about yourself, right? For someone to genuinely get to know you, it takes more than one 15-minute conversation or one 10-minute conversation. And so think about that when you approach other people. So go from short-term gains to really long-term mindset. The second one that I want you to shift, the second shift I want you to have is I want you to give first and I want you to ask later. You will build up think about a bank, like you will build up your credit, but I want you to think about giving first and asking later. And that mindset, right, it completely flips like traditional networking on its head. So instead of approaching someone saying, what can they do for me? You might ask instead, what unique value can I offer to you? And let me tell you something, it works. It's very surprising when just like genuinely someone asks you, what can I do for you? And you're honest. And the same way, like I said, there's a reciprocity that the human nature cannot help. And so why don't we use that to benefit ourselves? And then the third shift I want you to make is I want you to show up consistently. So not one and done, right? Networking is not a habit. It's not an event that you do one time. It's a habit. So you build it over time. And you'll notice that the most connected people that or even I know, right, they dedicate time to nurturing relationships. They'll send out, you get a random email saying, hey, I want to connect you with this person. Or they'll send you a random article, just like saying, hey, I think this might benefit you. You should read it. And they celebrate your wins with you. And sometimes they check in regularly without expecting anything in return, right? And this is something that, please hold me accountable. My team should also hold me accountable. I'm trying to do this where I want to block off 2 hours on a Friday, 2 hours if I can every Friday. And I just want to use it for relationship building. So if you're in this call or you're listening to this and you get a text message or a random video message from me on a Friday, know that it's me being vulnerable and transparent at the same time, because I want to try to make it work. I want to use that time. I want to block out that time for non-negotiable time on my calendar, because if it makes it to my calendar, it's going to happen. But use that just to like pour into others and to build relationships. And I think that it's going to generate opportunities because both parties are going to win. So I'm telling you what I'm doing, and I challenge you to do the same thing, right? How can we grow? How can we be better? This is just one example. So like I said, you get a message from me next Friday or the Friday after, just know that I want to try to do this and do it meaningfully. So I want to give you a powerful mental model that will kind of transform how you approach every relationship in your life. And the easiest way I can think about it is like, think about it as a relationship bank. So every single relationship you have, it just like it contains this invisible account. So between you and I, and like me and Dr. Chinyere, like there's just an invisible account that we've created. And every time that, I provide value to her, maybe I share useful information, I check in, I introduce her to someone in her field, or I recognize something that she's doing, or even just simply listening to her when she needs support, right? I'm making a deposit into that account. And every time that now I ask for help, or I request advice, or I seek an opportunity, I am making a withdrawal. So that's what I want you to think about. So the more that you give, the more that you put in, your bank is full, right? So you can always take out whenever you need. And just like a real bank account, like I said, like if you make too many withdrawals, there'll be not enough money, or not enough, like there'll be not enough in it. And so you have to try to put more and just keep putting more in this. So I hope kind of that analogy helped you understand that, like, give as much as you can. There will be times where you have ask and you'll make requests, but if your bank is full, then you can always just take. And I kind of want to challenge you a little bit, right? I want you to think about the most professional relationships that you have right now. Are they in a surplus, or are they in a deficit, right? Have you like just taken, or have you given back? Are you making regular deposits, or are you only reaching out when you need something? So I want you to think about it's a simple analogy, but just think about how powerful it is. However much that you're putting in is what you're going to get out. So another thing I want you to think about or to remember is that not all connections serve the same purpose. So you might meet someone who maybe is a little bit more surface level relationship, and then some relationship that you really need to go deep in, right? Strategic networking, it just means like knowing exactly who you need in your circle and why. And I call this kind of like the 3-tier networking strategy. And I think it's going to transform how you think and how you build a network, because I don't think we're doing it right at all. A lot of networking, right, will focus on connecting with people who are above you. So think about like that one's easy. Like you're trying to always connect with maybe a mentor or a coach, someone who is in a place that you want to get to, right? Someone who's in a place of status or achievement. But I think that that's only one piece of the whole puzzle, right? And if you're going to just be doing that, you're missing out on other opportunities. And I'm going to share that with you. I want to break down exactly what you need when you think about a strategic network. And we'll go through each of the tiers. First of all, we talked about it, and I said you need mentors, right? You need people who are where you want to be. And these relationships, they will truly accelerate your growth, and they'll help you avoid mistakes, like very costly mistakes that you may have not known. And they'll also even help you see opportunities that you would miss on your own. And I'm the product of really solid mentorship in my life. And when I was starting my business, like I invested heavily in building a relationship with 2 specific mentors. And I will tell you that like their guidance really like helped me achieve in 18 months, really probably what would have taken others maybe 3 to 5 years to complete. And so that's the power of having a mentor, someone who's done the thing, someone who's made the mistake, someone who's maybe 5-10 years ahead of where you want to be. So that's the first group. And I think that's a group that we do really well because that's all we know. Now I want you to think about the second group, and I want you to think about your peers. So these are people who are in like a similar level to where you are, but maybe they're in adjacent fields. So what they do is like they'll provide collaboration, and they'll provide like a ton of collaboration opportunities between you and that person. But there's also a level of like emotional support and valuable perspective because they're kind of on the same playing field as you. And then the third step, or the third kind of group that we miss a lot, are actually mentees. And, these are people that you can guide, and these are people that you can support. So your mentees will look at you as mentors, but you need to have them in your life. Because when you only network up, right, you're missing very critical opportunities for growth and for collaboration in the mentee group of people that you can inspire. And like I said, when you ignore this tier completely, right, you're missing out on just really profound benefits that you can of profound benefits of ways that you can teach other people. And so I challenge you today to audit your network, right? How many meaningful relationships do you have in each tier? Where are the gaps? And most importantly, I want you to think about how you can start filling it up. Like, what would you like to fill it up with? Now, I want you to understand that, like, the mindset behind this is very critical, and that's important. But we need to move on to tactical execution, because if you don't execute and if you don't take action, then nothing changes, and you're just like, okay, I wish. So I want to give you kind of the exact playbook framework of how I built relationships, and that have really pushed me forward, that have really helped me, that have helped me succeed to the person that I am today. And I would say that there are kind of 5 strategies in today's digital world that you can help, and like strategies that I have tested personally, and it works across different industries, across different personality types. And these are not just theoretical ideas. I think they're tested, and I know that they produce results. But what these strategies do is that they help you stand out, because at the end of the day, that's what you want to do. And in a world where you are getting about 121 emails every single day and countless like generic LinkedIn posts and LinkedIn requests, right? Traditional networking is just, it's not cutting through the noise anymore. So you have to keep asking yourself, how can I stand out? And so these tactics that I'm going to tell you about, right, they are designed to position you as that rare person that actually really creates value. And I don't want to like misuse the word value, because I think it's really important. But I think that in this statement that it really does make sense, that it's like, how can you stand out? How can you be rare? How can you be a rare gem? And I think that it has to do with how much value that you're giving. So I want to break each tactic down in detail. And then if you have any questions, like I said, toss it in the chat. Okay, so the first one is, probably everyone here knows that I'm passionate about LinkedIn. But the reason why is that LinkedIn is where like most professionals go to network, but a few people do it really well, right? So forget everything that you've been taught about like mass connection requests, and you need to connect with 1,000 people and you need to send all these generic messages. They don't work, right? I want you to think about the other person on the other side, right? If you sent them, or if you're that person and you're receiving a generic message or just like random LinkedIn requests, it's not solid, right? There's no foundation behind it. So I want you to first of all think about your connection requests. Like, how can they cut through the noise? So please don't go about connecting with 1,000 people, right? Lead with value. I think that's the first thing that is very important. And if you see someone you genuinely find interesting, engage with them. Now, when I tell you engage, right, I don't want you to just like wake up and go and write great posts or something. I want you to, when you find someone that you're like, I really want to build a relationship with that person, right? I want you to be among the first people who will provide thoughtful comments to add to their conversation, like give unique perspectives, because they'll see that. And I remember there was a physician, I'll tell you some of my secrets. There was a physician that I really wanted to connect with. And so every day, I made it a point. Every day, I would be one of the first people that would write on her post. And she posted religiously. And I said, I'm going to make sure that she notices me, because there was a lot that she could give to me. And so I was like, I know that LinkedIn is big for her. And so every day I would wake up and I'm like, I'm going to go post on her. And obviously it worked, because she noticed me, she saw me. And she taught me a lot, and she helped me grow to almost like where I am, even on LinkedIn. And so it's like, how can you continue to give? Remember what I told you about the bank, right? The more you deposit, the more you give. When it's time to ask for something, it just almost feels natural. And then finally, when you're going to send DMs, right? So I want you to think about a value first DM. And as someone who receives, I want to maybe say, and this is not an exaggeration, maybe like 50 DMs a day or more. And a lot of it is just like random, like, hey, do this or buy this or I'm selling this. And so you have to try to cut through the noise, right? I want you, before you start sending a DM, wait until you've engaged with that, with their content, maybe at least 3 times before sending them a direct message, so that they can put a name or a thought or, just something to your face. And I always want you to lead with value. You can say something as like, hey, based on your post, I noticed that you're struggling with this. I think I can help in this. This is the exact issue that you're struggling with. I've helped someone before. I hope you find it useful, and done. You don't control the response, but you've done your part. So when you think about LinkedIn, and let me give you the statistic, there are about 1.1 billion people on LinkedIn. And so when you think about that number is so huge. That can be your main networking source, but you just have to lead with value, because that's the most important thing. So the second strategy I call is a shared interest method. And this has completely transformed like my ability to build authentic relationships with people who seemed almost unreachable, right? And here's the insight that I really want to leave you with. The strongest relationships, right? They really start with professional topics. Like, if you're really going to go deep and you're going to build, it really starts with personal connection points. And so you don't have to always be pitching. You can really just get to know people for who they are. And so when you're thinking about wanting to reach out to someone, right, figure out what they like, figure out their shared interests, figure out unique things that make them special, or interests that you can then tap into. And I want you to when you initially meet someone or talk to someone, make it about them, make it about their interests. Scrap a business agenda. That will come. Remember what I told you in the beginning, like, this is not short-term wins, right? This is long-term. You're playing the long-term game. And when you do this, when you figure out a shared interest method, and it might be something like, like, let's just say, who's in the chat? Leah's in chat. Let's just say, like, Leah, I want to get to know her better. I know that if I talk to her about working out, like, I know that I will get to her. And so that's my first, like, that will be my first in. And then I can build on that before I then say, hey, Leah, come join my podcast or whatever, something that I want to ask. But I definitely know that she loves working out and she's into health. And so why don't you get to know her on a personal level before then you can build business? So that's how I want you to start thinking about what a shared interest method looks like and feels like. So this third strategy is, I think it's where like maybe 90 to 95% of networking fails completely. And I said it before, but I want to be crystal clear. The initial meeting is the starting point. The real relationship happens in the follow-up. And we do this very poorly. You meet someone one time, especially I'll use conferences or meetings or networking events. You meet them one time, you'll hit it off, and then you won't reach out to them for like another, I don't know, 6 months to a year, maybe when you need something, or even when you see them at that conference the next day. And then the next year. That you're not doing anything, right? You're not building relationships. It's just, we're going to be very surface level. And most people will do 1 or 2 things after meeting someone valuable. Never follow up, or like I said, they'll wait until they need something. And that, if you go with that approach, like, you're just going to kill the relationship. So I've developed this 3-2-1 method that I use consistently, and it has worked. And so I want to share it with you. I don't want it to seem like forced or unnatural. I think if you do it well, and remember, you're not doing this with 10,000 people, right? You're doing it just a few people that you really think you want to build and you want to go deep with. So following, as soon as you first meet the person, right? Your first follow-up is going to be within 3 days of the meeting. So maybe that's an email, maybe that's a phone call, maybe that's a LinkedIn message, but you're sending something personalized, like a personalized note about that conversation that you had 3 days ago. And if you are someone who forgets, because there's so much in my brain that sometimes I forget, I will always pull out my phone. And I don't even sometimes get to the notes section, right? I'll just send a text message to myself, because my face or my number is like one of my top text messages. So like with iPhone, or you have like your top 9, I think, and I'm one of them. And so I can always quickly just access myself and send myself a quick text message about that person. So that way, like, I can remember that. And it works really well. So after you meet them the first time, within 3 days, I want you to send a message. Then the second, remember 3, 2, 1, 2 weeks later, send them something that is of value. And this can be like an article, or this can be even like connecting them with someone else that if you remember the conversation that you guys had, that you're like, oh, this person said they might need someone, introduce them to that person if you have that resource. So that's what you would do about 2 weeks later. Still make it specific. Don't make it generic. Make it feel like, wow, they remembered me. I was valuable to them, right? And then the third one, which is 1 month later, just send a brief, quick check-in. And if they live in the same area as you do, maybe a coffee, or just figure out something that like would take it to the next level. And I bet you that if you did that, you will stay top of mind to that person. And like I said, this system works because it's a little structured, and there's nothing wrong with structure because it's going to keep you in line, but it also helps you remember. So then you're like, okay, 3, 2, 1, I got it. 1 month later, I'm building. And then from there, that relationship will be a lot more natural. And I think I know that it's going to work. So now the fourth strategy is, this is kind of the one that transforms how people perceive you in their network, right? It's based on this principle that it sounds simple, but we don't practice it as much. And it's the fact that like the best time to build relationships is when you don't need anything. And that is truly the best time, because then you don't have an ask, you don't have a way in, you just truly want to get to know that person. You'll notice that a lot of people will reach out to you when they need a sale, when they need a job, when they need a client, when they need a favor, when they need something from you. And by that time, as humans, right, we've maybe already made an impression or like felt a certain way. And at that point, that relationship is going to feel somewhat transactional, because it is transactional, because you're asking for something, right? So why don't you proactively create value for the people in your network when you know that you don't need anything from them? And so when you think about it that way, it really helps. And I'm not asking you to do much, and I'm not asking you to like bend over backwards. This are simple things like a shared insight. So if you read something that you're like, oh, this person is gonna love this, send them that information. If it's just a strategic introduction and saying, hey, I heard this person talking about this, and you might be the right person to help them walk through this. Make that introduction. You could even recommend other opportunities. It could be something as small as recommending a book, and just say, hey, you talked about better time management. Read this book, read deep work and how to go in and how to really focus and use your time well and create time blocks. That is giving value. And it's something very simple, and it didn't take a ton out of you. And then last thing I'll say is, when you don't need anything, celebrate other people's wins. So when people win, just like share them on, send them a message, send them, something small, send them a DM and just say, hey, I saw that, congratulations. It goes a long way because people remember it. And then this is the fifth strategy, and it will completely revolutionize, like how you approach networking events, conferences, a lot of industry gatherings, especially when you're going to it very frequently, right? And I want to say this, a lot of people will go to these events with no plan. They'll just say, you know what, I'm going and I'm hoping to meet any and everyone. And maybe like they'll grab a drink, they'll stand in the corner, and they'll have surface level relationships. But that's not going to be you, because you're here today, right? I want you to think about when you start going to events and you start networking, because you're trying to maybe build your investor list, you're trying to build your client list, and you say, hey, I need to be out there. How can you show up at events? How can you show up at conferences better? And the first thing I will tell you to do is research your attendees in advance. So whenever you go to these conferences and these events, right, they will put up all the speakers, and they'll put up, they might even put up the attendee list, so you know who's going. I want you to go and like look for those lists, and at minimum, like even if like you can't find the list, right? Sometimes there'll be hashtags and people will be like, hey, I'm going to this event on this day. And so you can look online and find that. So for me, before I go to a conference, I spend maybe 2 to 3 hours, and I think about maybe 5 to 7 people that I really want to connect with. And I will go on their LinkedIn. I will learn about them. If it's someone I really want to meet, I might send them an email, but I will study kind of their recent content. I'll study, if it's a company, I'll study what's going on in the company. I might even like stalk them and figure out what some of their personal interests are. But this works because it gives you it just gives you a strategy so that when you go in, you're not like frantic and you're not trying to win over the whole room. You're literally going to say, I'm coming here to see 5 people. These are who they are, and I want to meet them. And I've done the research, and I can sound educated and sound, professional, but personal at the same time when I meet them. And then, so that's the first one, is who exactly are you going to meet? The next one is I want you to set like specific connection goals. So instead of trying to meet everyone, right? Remember what I said, 3 to 5 is plenty. And if you are an introvert and you're sitting in this meeting or you're listening to this webinar, I have tips for you. Don't worry. Let me drink water. So think about connections. We're going deep, 3 to 5, not a lot. And then next thing I want you to do is, if you are nervous, right, think about some conversational questions or conversation starters that you can think about, right? So you might be nervous, especially if it's maybe a mentor that you're trying to meet, right? Think about 3 to 5 very thoughtful questions that you want to ask them. And, you could even be like, hey, I saw your company expanded into maybe this market. What has been the most maybe surprising challenge, or what has been your biggest success? And then that way they're like, it's easy for you to talk about what you love, what you know really well, what you're passionate about. So bring that out of the person. And then, like I said, follow up. You got to follow up after these conferences. And your follow up is not a sales pitch. It's just like, it was so nice to meet you. I'm hoping that we continue the connection. Keep it simple. It's going to really go a long way, right? The difference between random networking and like strategic connection building is preparation. So when you're going to these events, please don't go and don't show up there and say, fingers crossed, hope for the best. Preparation is key. And the people who prepare, they will succeed. Okay, so like I said, if you're sitting and you're thinking and you're like, okay, this sounds really good, but like when I walk into rooms that there's so many people, my hands start shaking and I really don't know what to say. Truly, I'm an introvert, and those situations scare me. And if that's you, where you're like, the very thought of like networking makes you want to crawl under your desk or like, I don't know, eat pins or something, I want you to pay very specific attention to this section, because it might surprise you, but like some of the most connected and some of the most influential people, they are hardcore introverts, and they're not the life of the party. They're not the people that are dancing. A lot of them are just like truly introverts, but they have used their natural advantages in relationship building. And that's what has helped them. So I want you to, the key is not when you go to try not to be an extrovert, because that's not you, right? All that's going to end up doing is like draining your energy and making you feel inauthentic. Instead, I want to show you ways that you can leverage that, like your deep thinking, your introspective nature, and your listening skills. I know that you can use that to your benefit. So you don't necessarily have to go there and like shrink to the corner, or go there and like act like you're this hype man or hype woman, but you're not really that, right? And the thing that a lot of, as an introvert, or if you are one, right? A lot of the ways that people like fail you or like advise you wrong is that they're like, just go and do your best, like hope for the best. But I think it's more about forming deep relationships. So think deep instead of broad. So you don't have to, you might not be the person that meets 5 people, might be too much for you. And maybe it might be 1 or 2, but like those 1 or 2, you go really deep. And I think that it will still serve you really well. And I think that you will grow. So I want to show you some like introvert-friendly networking tips. The first one, and I just mentioned it, is go deep. You don't need to go wide. Just remember, like, your superpower is depth. It's not breadth. So you're not trying to meet the whole world, because you don't even know how to. And you're not even trying to meet dozens of people. You're just trying to do 1 or 2. So go deep, not wide. And then another thing that you can do as an introvert, right? Because some of you introverts are like, you're really great with content creation. Use that to your benefit, right? Use content as a way to be like a networking magnet. So flip the script on them. Instead of you reaching out, like, people will come to you because you're putting out content and they're seeing your work, and the content is very valuable, right? So think articles, think videos, podcasts, even on LinkedIn, right? You can put posts that people are like, ooh, I really want to get to know her. And that way, it like some of the ice is broken, and it's a little less intimidating. And again, they're coming to you, asking you for like your expertise, because you've put it out there in content form. That's something to think about. And then you might not be the person that goes to large conferences. You might just be like one-on-one or small over like large group settings. And so think about places that are maybe a little bit more intimate, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. So you do not necessarily have to go to large groups. You can do, and also when you're thinking about, let's just say you went to a big conference, right? You might even leverage requesting meetings beforehand. So you're requesting 1 or 2 meetings before to help you network, as this might be a challenge for you. So, and then the last one, which I've talked about, is like value bomb these people, right? When you're connecting with someone new, like give them very specific, maybe like insight on their business, on their work. And then that way you don't have to be afraid of small talk, because you don't want small talk, and neither does that person. So as an introvert, these are ways that you can leverage your strengths without having to feel like, man, do I really have to talk to 50 people? Let me give you some grace. No, you don't. Okay, so we have kind of reached this crucial, inflection point that separates those who have a network that they can really leverage from those who really want to create like extraordinary opportunities. And there's a difference, right? You can have a large network and not really do anything with them. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people have, tens of thousands of connections, or even tons of people on their phone, but they never activate that. And I want you to realize that's hundreds or thousands of people that are sitting dormant in your phone, on your LinkedIn, and there's great opportunity in them. And so I want you to think about the difference between a passive and an active networking situation. And the difference is like, having money almost feels like having money like buried in your backyard versus like investing it in assets that generate returns, and clearly you can tell that's an area of passion for me. But that's how you have to think about it, as active versus passive networking. And I really want to share something personal, right? For years, I felt like I had a solid network of contacts, but I always felt maybe a little uncomfortable leveraging those relationships. Maybe because I felt like I couldn't ask, or I wasn't giving enough. And these were all like thoughts in my head that were completely wrong. Sometimes I would be nervous about being too pushy, or, taking advantage of people's goodwill. And as a result, I felt like, now I look back, I was leaving like massive opportunities on the table. And that was silly, because when I finally started understanding the full power of networking, and the power of giving value, and the power of having my bank, right? I didn't feel bad anymore, because I understood even the power of reciprocity. And I understood, what Zig Ziglar said, that if I want to get far, like if I want help, the quickest way that I can get help is to help someone else. And so that idea, when I started to embrace that, then I started tapping into my network. And I cannot emphasize enough that power of reciprocity. And it's very powerful, but it also should be used very ethically, right? When you constantly provide value, when you constantly give to your network, right? People actually want to see you succeed in return. They want to help you. And it feels really good when they get to reciprocate that. So it creates almost like a balance in the relationship. That's what I want you to think about. Like, if you have a large network and you're not really using it because you're like, I don't know if I'm being too pushy, I don't want to ask. I want you to flip the script a little bit and really think about, like, look at all the ways that I've given back to this community or this group, that it's okay to ask. And you would be very surprised that when you ask, they'll be very willing to help. So I want you to think about how to turn some of those dormant relationships, because I think that's the most important thing. And so I really want to give you maybe 3 strategies that will help you transform all these connections into true opportunities. The first one is, and this kind of builds on what we've been talking about, which is stay top of mind, right? And you're doing this strategically, but you're not doing it forced, and you're doing it well, right? You don't want to be that person anymore that will connect and disappear. That's not who you are, especially after this hour time that you spent with me, because they will forget you. So think about consistency, and you're consistent without being annoying. So you want to stay top of mind. You want to be consistent, and that's regular check-ins, regular touch points that doesn't feel forced. And also I want you to be known for something specific. Like I want to think, hey, she is the person that does this. That's how I want to connect. That's how I want others to connect to you. And then don't be afraid to ask at the right time when you're providing value. Asking for help is not just acceptable, it's actually expected in building and fostering that relationship. So the key is, how do you ask? And when you stay top of mind, when you're consistent, when you're known for something specific and you're giving value, then asking, there's no problem with asking. And also be specific about what you need. So don't ask for something vague, and ask the right people who have exactly what you need. Did I move it? Okay, so I want to show you one of the most powerful principles in networking. And it's this, and like I just talked about, be very specific. Vague results or like vague requests, will not get you any results. It might even get you no. And so you have to be able to describe what you do, what you ask for, and how you follow up. That is very important. And, I'll use an example about a conference I went to in January, and it was about apartment buildings, right? When I went up to a broker, I said, this is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. And so I was very, very specific. And of course, they want my business. So they're like, okay, I know what you're looking for. And then when I came back and I followed up, it was very natural. And these people are like, they are fantastic networkers, because within a few days, they even connected me, like the things I'm teaching here, they connected me to other people. And it was just genuinely giving value. And I was benefiting from it. So that's how I want you to think about the power of specificity, right? Ask, be specific about who you are, what you do, and what your requests are when it is time for you to be able to ask for something. So don't be vague. Vague won't get you anything. Like I said, vague requests will get you very vague results. And then, and so as you think about this, is very important, right? And that this same principle actually also applies with like introductions and opportunities. Always be very specific in how you come across and even in how you introduce other people. So we're wrapping up, and we've covered a lot of ground today, right? But the critical thing that I want you to take away is that knowledge without action is completely worthless. And I was speaking on a podcast this afternoon, and I said the takeaway that I wanted everyone to take away was that inaction will get you nowhere. And so you can acquire all this knowledge, right? But it does nothing if you don't take action. And so the strategies only work when you implement them. The information that I'm giving you is not going to transform your business or your career, but when you start implementing it, that will, right? And this is a very sobering reality, is that 90% of the people here today, right, who attend this webinar will never implement anything. They'll learn it and they'll be excited about learning it, and they'll be very excited in the moment. They'll be active in the chat, but then they'll just return to their everyday life, right? And I don't want that to happen to you. So right now, I just want us to think of a simple 24-hour plan that I want you to be part of that top 10% that will go and take action, right? And the key, in order for you to implement, in order for you to take action, it has to be very simple and it has to be immediate. So don't try to implement everything at once, right? I want you to start with one focused thing, one focused action that you're going to take and that you're going to implement. So I want you to physically write it down. Every week I tell you to bring a pen and a paper or your phone, but write down 3 specific actions that you're going to commit to in the next 24 hours as to how you're going to network a little bit better. And I'm going to help you. So don't go and get nervous. Write down 3 people, 3 specific people in your network that this week that you will give them value. Like I said, when we think about value, we make it this big thing, but really it could be a book recommendation or it could be an introduction to someone. But think about that. And I want this week is about to end. So you have tomorrow and the weekend, but think about 3 people that you can give value, not next month, but this week, and not when it's convenient, just do it right now. Do it this week. And then second, I told you what I was going to start doing. Every Friday, I'm going to take some time. I'm going to block off 2 hours in my calendar, and I'm just going to use it to reach out to people and to build solid relationships. So I want you to do the same. So maybe 2 hours is too much. Maybe you do an hour, and maybe Friday doesn't work for you. Maybe Saturday morning works better, but put it in your calendar. For me, if it doesn't make my calendar, it doesn't get done. So put it in your calendar and think about it as a way of building relationships. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this and why I'm emphasizing this is because relationships will take you where you have never even thought you could go. They will open doors that you never even thought existed, and it's through people. So when I tell you to spend an hour a week just really trying to build better relationships, I'm not asking for much, and that's not asking for much of yourself as well. So do that. Remember, I told you, inaction leads to like nothing, no growth, nothing. So how can you take action today that will take you to the next step, right? And then the third one I want you to do, I said 3 things. The first one, pick 3 people. 2, pick an hour on your calendar. And then I want you to just pick one. If one of those 2 strategies don't work for you, pick something else that I've talked about today, and then just implement it. So if those 2 don't work, pick something else and something that maybe resonated with you a little bit better, and do it. But I want to be crystal clear about this. The relationships that you build today and the ones that you nurture, right? They truly will determine your opportunities tomorrow. So 5 years from now, the people that you're building with, like your career trajectory, your business growth, is truly, it's directly correlated with your network. The people that you do life with, the people that you do business with, the people that you grow on a personal and a professional level. So why don't you start building it right now? That is all that I want you to take away from here. That's all I want you to remember. So I have not asked the chat to light up, but I want the chat to light up right now. Which of these 3 opportunities or these 3 actions are you going to implement? So toss it in the chat. And really the reason why you're doing it is because you're making a public commitment and you're saying, I'm going to do this. And if I see that you write it in the chat, I might text you, I might call you out, but you have a higher likelihood of following through if you just say it out loud. And if you forgot what I said before, knowledge without action is just entertainment. It's just like random information. So I'm actually gonna pause for a second, and I'm just gonna give you a second to write in the chat. Tell me something that you are going to commit to today. Something that that you say, today is the day I'm gonna build. I'm going to take time. I'm going to put time into my schedule, and I'm going to build solid relationships. So that's my goal. Leah said schedule 1 hour to build relationships. That's great. So think about what else can you do, or what else are you thinking about doing? And 1 hour is not a lot of time. Oh, let me tell you, the amount of time you scroll through social media, I can guarantee you that it's more than an hour per day. So think about scheduling just 1 hour a week. And I'm really excited to do this because I think good, genuine things will come out of it. And like, think about going through your calendar and just like, going through your phone and just like, I reached out to this person. I think I can't wait to hear great things come out of it. Lajide said, I'll commit to spending 2 hours weekly to build relationships. I love that. And I bet you that Lajide understands the power of relationships. And so that's why something like this is really, really important. So yes, thank you guys for lighting up the chat and talking about it. Dr. Chinyere said, I'm going to implement the 3-2-1 strategy in my networking. That's right. And it's not difficult. It's not a heavy lift. So I'm excited. I'm going to hold you accountable. Okay. So as we wrap up, I want to share something very personal with you, right? I think that the most valuable deals and partnerships and opportunities that I have had in my career have all come from relationships. And often in like really unexpected ways that couldn't be predicted, that couldn't be forced. And so as I share that with you today, and that's why this topic is important, right? Because truly the people in your circle will determine where you go and how far you go. And I have learned this, and I know when I say this, everybody's going to know it, but like really your network, it really truly determines your net worth. And this is even both more from an emotional and a financial standpoint, because the quality of your connections, it directly impacts the quality of like your opportunities, your thinking, ultimately your life, right? How you grow, how you develop. I think I can say very well that it ties to your network. And when things are uncertain, you can always count on the relationships. Jobs will come and go, and companies will restructure, and industries will transform, but meaningful relationships, they never go anywhere. And what a lot of people miss is that it's a compounding effect. So this is long term. So you're building and you're adding to what you're already doing, and you're feeding it. And so, like as Leah said, as she's scheduling her 1 hour, or Laje is scheduling his 2 hours, you're adding to that, and you're compounding the goodwill. You're adding more to the bank. And I want you to remember that networking isn't just something you do, it becomes who you are. And I'm not talking about just like the shallow networking. I'm talking about the building relationships that will take you to the next level. It almost becomes part of your identity, rather than just an activity that you're doing. And when you think about it that way, that is also a mindset shift that you have to have. So you nurture the relationships today, and they will almost determine the opportunities that are available to you tomorrow. So I will say this, that your future self is counting on who you are today, how you show up, how you build relationships, how you network. So my ask that I ask you is, what kind of network are you building? What kind of relationship are you building? What type of bank? What are you putting into your bank today? That's what I want you to think about and to take away. Okay, so if what I've shared with you today has resonated with you in any sort of way, right? If you're committed to really building a network that creates like extraordinary opportunities, I have created something special, and it's new. And so it's a lot of what we talked about today, which is building relationships, which is community, which is networking. So I want to invite you to join the Expansive Circle community. And it's truly an exclusive community where relationship building is at the foremost of what we do, which is connection and collaboration and growing together, and really building a fuller life and really an expansive life, right? It's not just another online group, which there are plenty of, but it's really a curated community of professionals who are really committed to authentic growth. And part of that is like solid relationship building. So part of what you'll get in the community is we're going to be implementing monthly virtual masterminds where we tackle specific topics from personal development to growth to even networking to building businesses to investing. So it kind of runs the gamut, right? And you have direct access to everyone in the group, as well as me, for like strategic advice as we start building this community and start growing. And I think for me, the biggest thing is like bringing like-minded professionals together to practice and to learn from. And so you will also get like a library of like templates and scripts and frameworks for everything that we talk about, and you will learn from it. And so like the regular investment for this is about $997 a year. And that's what the current members are happy to pay. But we talked about relationships and we're building, and you invested an hour of your time with me today. So I will give it to the first 50 people. I think we have not hit our 50 mark, but we will soon, and you will receive complete access for a whole year. So you'll get access to everything that I talked about and more. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm building this community with intention. And I want founding members who are action takers and who are value creators, because that's what we talked about today. And that's what we want to do. And that's what we're going to do in the community. And that's the exact kind of people who attend the webinars that we put together. And they implement what they learn. So you're part of that 10%. So to claim your spot, I think our team is going to put the link in the link is going to show up somewhere, and the code is founder. So just use that, join in, and just come be a part of what we're doing. And it's completely free. But it's more than that, right? You're joining something where really you have the potential to grow. You have the potential to connect with like-minded people. So I encourage you, like, it won't hurt. Claim your spot. So on that note, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for investing your valuable time with me today. I always say this, but I don't take it for granted that you show up and you spend an hour, sometimes an hour and a half with me, and you chose to do that. And you wanted to explore really how to build meaningful professional relationships. So obviously, I would love to continue this conversation beyond this webinar. So reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. Tell me, like use some of the tips that we talked about today when you connect with me, so that I'll know you paid attention. But I want to leave you with this final thought, right? Networking, real networking. It's not about short-term transactions. It's about really building a web of meaningful relationships that support you. They will also challenge you, and then it'll create opportunities that you can't access alone. And that's what I want you to take away from here, right? That it's like, how are we connected? How can we connect? How do you build a web together and do things that you could not do alone? So I want you to start small, but start today. And like I said before, your future self will thank you for taking action today. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And now I want to say, before I say questions, or after questions, I want you to go build networks and go build relationship and connections that really matter. So thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, toss it in the chat if you have any questions. But Pandora said, thank you. Leah said, great work. Thank you. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Oh, I think there's a question. How should a college student go about this? Oh, this is a great question. Oh, I have a college student. I'm quite excited. So I think that's a really good question. And I don't want you start off small. So you're in school, you are with a ton of people. So you're like-minded people who are your peers. So I want you to grow with them. And then also in college, right? You have professors and you have even maybe TAs or professors or people who then can be mentors for you. So then be bold, ask them. If you see someone who you're like, oh, I want to emulate that person, I want to be like that person in 5 or 10 years, then I say you ask them to be your mentor. But even in college, right, you still have access to like networking platforms. So go ahead and join LinkedIn right now and just start sharing your story, start sharing your journey, and then link up with people who are like similar places that you are or places that you want to go, maybe even in your field. Or if you're thinking about business, that's something else to think about. So don't feel like it's too early for you. I think this could be the right time. Okay. Thank you for sharing these secrets. You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciated all the interactions in the comments and in the chat. It made me smile. So I hope this was helpful. And as usual, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach me when you join the community or on LinkedIn, or like I'm everywhere. So wherever you find me, I'd love to answer your questions and walk with you in any like part of your growth journey that you're in. But on that note, everyone, have a wonderful evening.